Hi everybody, good morning, this is Jean here from Truelove Quilts for You. Today is our block party, block number 16. We only have 4 more blocks to go. Like I said last week, I'm like, oh, I don't, this is exciting. We're going to be finishing up our quilt. I'm going to do a week, before I show you my block, I'm going to be doing a week of showing you how to do the backing and then how to do the sandwiching, the basting, how to prepare your fabrics and your batting, and then how to do the actual quilting, which we're thinking about, and then actually how to do the binding, which is so very important, and maybe even, I don't know quite, because the labeling of your quilt, because if you're a beginner and you have this quilt at the end of the day, as I was talking to Jen about it, you really want to label it so that your 10 generations from now on can see the quilt that you've made and say, oh, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother Jen made that quilt. And because there's a label on it. But I'll put my thinking cap on it. This week, block number 16, super simple. Super simple. And even as I was making it, I thought, is that really what we want to concentrate on? What I'm talking about is keeping yourself organized. Keeping yourself, if you do have a pattern, like sort of where do you begin your thought process. You like a pattern in a book, and just keeping it organized. So I did this a little bit different. This is our block. Okay? This is block number 16. And as you see, super easy. Bunch of triangles and squares sewn together. No matching, no fussing, no ironing, no folding, no triangles, no cutting. This is our block. I've used 6 print of your fabrics, more of a scrappy, visually more busy, heavier block. And then I use 6 background, whatever they may be. Or the neutral, to make this diagonal pop. And while I was saying, when I started out, I actually cut out the whole thing and laid out the whole block, which you're just going to see in a few minutes. Just starting from square one. I've cut everything out. I'm giving you specific instructions on what to cut. And as you will see, this is sort of, there's row 1 and 6 are the same. Row 2 and 5 are the same. Row 3 and 4 are the same, just flipped. So I give you the instructions on how to cut this, but in the very beginning, it's a matter of pulling out your fabrics. And as I was addressing, if you're using scraps, awesome, 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 awesome. Make it really scrappy. But as you can see, it's a scrappier looking block, but with some semblance of order with the cutting instructions, which I show you. The piecing is dead easy. This only took me not very long at all. And once you cut it, 2.5-inch strips by the lengths that I give you, punctuated with this white, real pretty. Again, a little bit more of a visual busier block this week. Some of our star blocks have had more of a white background, but yeah, block 16. Of our block party. And I just wanted to show you, I cut it exactly precise 12.5 inches. So I'm quite delighted that all of my blocks are measuring 12.5 inches according to my my instructions. Like, I think that's amazing. Like, go figure. But like, you really have to be careful, because quite a few people said, oh, I had a lot of difficulty with one of the blocks, and I was thinking, oh, I'm trying to make my instructions so very precise for beginners. So leave some comments, like what exactly was your problem, or if you're not getting to 12.5 inches, and if you're not, that's fine. Somebody said, oh, all my blocks are turning out 12 inches. And at the end of it, I'm like, that's fine. That's super. At the end of the day, you're going to have blocks that are 12 inches. But like if some are 12.5 or some are 11.5, then you have a little bit of you messing about. You might have to even add a little bit. I said to someone, they're like, my blocks are 11.5 inches. I don't know how that turned out, because I see a 1/4 of an inch off, you know, a 1/2 inch off, but like a whole inch, like, you know. So maybe you just have to add a little strip around the side. It's fine. Don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. It's just a quilt, you know. And a lot of people are saying, oh, you're good that you admit your mistakes. And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Like, you know, like, everybody makes mistakes, and all we're doing is making a quilt. You know, like I keep saying, life is stressful enough. Life is stressful enough, and you're going to come into your sewing room like, oh my gosh, you know, like, you know, my points don't match or something. Well, like, who cares? Like, no, you care, but like, it's not enough to get your knickers in a twist. You know what I'm saying? You know, like, so just enjoy the process. I always say, you know, strive for protection. You might need it. Strive for progress, not perfection. You know, finished is better than perfect. You know, all my sort of corny little sayings here. Let your faith be bigger than your fear. I have faith in you guys, and you're frightened, but let your faith be bigger than your fear. Stitch your stress away. I have all these signs I'm looking at in my sewing room. There's no such thing as too much fabric. I like that one. Oh, I like this one. I got a sewing machine for my husband. Good trade. No, I have a really good husband. I got a really good husband. Anyway, I'm waffling on. Friends are like fabrics. You can never have enough. I have all these silly signs. I like my signs. Oh, I finished my jelly roll. If you've been watching that, I finished my jelly roll. That was nice. I like that. And I'm working on something else. Oh, wait. I got a new camera. I got a new camera. A Canon G7X Mark II. Hopefully, it will be good. I have like a Nikon camera, which was a really good camera. But it only, as I was saying forever, it only videotaped in 10-minute increments, and then the whole thing overheated. And we did all sorts. My son went to look at my camera. He's like, Mom, this is really a good camera. And I'm like, I didn't know what I was doing. It's just a DSLR, whatever that means. And it was a good camera. And he's like, Mom, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it right. This is a really good camera. So anyway, he started looking up this Nikon D3100. It's now discontinued, and it was an expensive camera because it overheated after 10 minutes. So it could only do 10-minute videos. So he put me on. I did a lot of due diligence. I went and I got this Canon. It's a little point and shoot, but it's supposedly really good. Anyway, I'm waffling on. Here's my block 16. I hope you love it. Just keep yourself organized. Have fun with this. Pull some pretty fabrics. Think about your fabric placement, because that's all it is this week. Think about your fabric placement. Next week I might be doing another star or not. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to figure that one out. Anyway, my block party, we're coming to the end. Isn't it exciting? It's so much fun. So I've really enjoyed the process and seeing all your beautiful, beautiful blocks. Oh, going to the quilt show next week. If you're there, Edison Convention Center, Edison, New Jersey, April the 28th. We're going to be there, Jen and I, on the Saturday. My daughter and her friend might be coming along also. My daughter Malia, I only have one daughter, and we have 9 boys, one daughter, and her dearest friend and my dearest friend, next to Jen, my friend Ying. She's from Vietnam, and she's like my daughter. So they might be coming or not. But if they are, we're videotaping it with my new camera. Hopefully it's going to be cool. So anyway, there you go, folks. Block 16. I hope you enjoy it. Keep organized, get some real pretty fabrics, and enjoy making this 12.5 inches or whatever. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. So I'm starting this week out just a little bit different. I have actually cut my pieces, and I'm setting up my block. And as I said, or I will be saying, in the very beginning, this week, what I want to concentrate on, if you've been following along now for months, is basically how to read a little bit more of a complicated pattern. Not complicated in piecing, at all because it's literally straight stitches and rows sewn together. There's no triangles, there's no incredible measuring. Well, there is measuring, but not like incredibly precise. But what I want you to concentrate on is actually keeping things organized. That's what this is. That's what this week's block is all about. Keeping the pieces very, very organized. We've had to keep all the pieces organized, but this one in particular, again, visually, this is going to be a bit of a heavier block. It's going to have quite a lot. It's going to have actually 6 of your print fabrics and then 1 background. So it has 7 fabrics in this block here. Now what I've done is I've laid it out for you. Hopefully maybe you can just pause this and then really write down what you are going to be needing, and also very important, what fabrics you want to pull. That's very important. Now you could just pull random. If you're using scraps, by all means. This is sort of a scrappy block punctuated with the white blocks going down, just to break the scrappiness up. So if you're using scraps, wonderful. If not, if you're choosing and you're wanting it to really coordinate with your blocks, this is where you just want to just think a little bit ahead of time. And that's what I've done. Before I actually cut, I really thought about what I had fat quarters. Which ones do I want to go where? And I sort of laid them out in rows, row 1 to 6, to see visually. And I quite like this. And again, you know all my patterns, my colorways, my fabric choices. This is incorporating quite a lot of all of the colorways in it. The peaches and the greens, the reds, the teals, the black and white. So now, cutting instructions. What I have done is I have actually, we have 6 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what it is row 1 and row 6 are identical, just mirror image. So what I've done is I've actually shown you what to cut. This is the exact same cutting for rows 1 and 6. Rows 2 and 5 are the exact same cutting measurements, and then row 3 and 4 are the exact same cutting measurements, just flipped when we sew them. So let's start with actually our background, or your blocks going diagonally. All you're going to be cutting are 6 2.5 inch background fabrics, or your blocks right down the middle, diagonally. 6 2.5 inch squares. Now, once you have figured out your fabric configuration, your top row and your bottom row are exactly the same. Row 1 and 6. You just want to cut 1 piece of fabric 2.5 inches wide by 10.5 inches long. That's row 1 and 6. And in this case, I actually used my directional stripe fabric, which I haven't had an opportunity really to use because I've been a little bit like, I don't want my eye to be all over the place. So this just showcases this fabric here. My next rows 2 and 5 are cut the exact same measurements. For each of your fabrics, in row 2 and 5, you're going to be cutting 1 piece each, 2.5 by 8.5 inches. And then also, for row 2 and 5, you're going to be cutting a 2.5 inch square of your printed fabric. That takes up row 2 and 5. We're left with rows 3 and 4 next to each other. Rows 3 and 4, you're going to be cutting from 1 each of the prints. You're going to be cutting a piece 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches from 1 each print. And then also from 1 each print, 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. These pieces. Now that's our cutting instructions. And again, most of this block is your fabric placement, your pleasing fabric placement, if you really want to think about it, again, if it's scrap, just pull your scraps and start cutting your proper measurements. Or the purpose of this block is to keep yourself organized when you do come across a more piecey block with lots of different pieces and lots of different measurements. This is how I like to do this. It's a very easy piece, a very easy block to piece, as you see. Very easy. The block is almost done. We just have to start sewing these rows together, and then rows this way, and then we'll just sew the 6 rows together and our block is done. But this week I just want you to get out a pen and paper, make your measurements, write them down, keep everything organized. By all means, if you're going to take it over to your machine, or keep this image up, just so you have an idea, or you know exactly where you're going to be stitching. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my machine, and I'm literally just going to stitch my right sides. This one, my first row. I'm going to go row by row. I'm not going to go tricky and try to chain piece anything. I'm going to go slow and steady. I'm going to take my row 1, which is right on the top there. I'm going to take this piece of 2.5 inch and I'm going to stitch it to this side, having pinned it, having stitched it, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to press that one over to the dark. And I'm just going to continue with my rows very carefully, coming back to my sort of the drawing table, figuring out where my blocks are. I've laid everything out nice and neatly after I've cut everything. So I'm going to keep really in order. Now I'm going to start sewing my rows together and I'll be back. I've sewn all my rows together, my blocks together in each row. I would say this is probably the easiest block I've made. You'll have made. The hardest part is the nice cutting pieces and keeping everything organized right in front of you. Super, super easy. What I've done is I've sewn a precise 1/4 inch, all of my units together. A nice 1/4 inch, and I've pressed these units here. I've pressed everything to the dark side of the fabric. I've pressed it away from my white, if you can see that, every single one. And now what I'm going to do, having done that, these units here, we are going to be matching this block up here. Obviously, we're going to be matching this to this, and that one, that point, and then that point. But because we've cut them so well, and because we've ironed them so well, we've pressed them to the dark, these pieces here, I'm going to go over, I'm going to pin this, and I'm going to nest this seam right here. I'm going to nest that seam beautifully. You've done this. We're going to pin this, perhaps on either side of that nested seam. You can feel it, how beautifully that nests together. And then I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch right along there. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to stitch this row to this one, matching this seam. And I'm just going to continue right the way down until we have our diagonals going right across. And then, that's unbelievable. This is the easiest, quickest block to actually piece. And then I'll see, hopefully, it will measure my 12.5 inches. We shall see. There is my finished block. Oh my word. Yeah, definitely the easiest block we'll have ever made. Just wanna concentrate on your cutting, your measuring, and your organizing. But such an easy block. Block number 16. Let me just see. Hold up. Let me just see. Oh, that's upside down, but let's see. Look at that. 12.5 inches. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfectly cut 2.5-inch strips. Keep your measurements precise. Again, visually a busier block. And I was thinking, of course, when we go to lay out the blocks, as you know, you can lay them every which way. You could lay it that way. You could lay it up, you know, going vertical, doesn't really matter. Whatever is more pleasing to you, this can go whichever way. Upside down, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so I love it. I love this block number 16. When I was cutting it out, the most important thing to me was just wanting to make a pleasing, with all of my bits of fabric, that I have a pleasing arrangement, to tie in all of my my fabrics. Like last week's block number 15 had 2 fabrics. Some of them have only had 3. This has 7. And I like that, to keep my eye moving around the block. So there you go. Simple, simple, simple block. You have your precise measurements. Just measure real well. And then the trick is to lay this block out from minute 1 and figure out your fabric placement, figure out your measurements, and then just stitch them together, and that's it. My back looks as well, as nice. I've just pressed everything up. Again, press to the dark side on these bits here, but then because it's both light and dark, I just chose to press everything up. I set all my seams. There is somebody who, actually, Donna Jordan, who does a beautiful, unbelievable tutorial. She's so very quick and clever and succinct, everything that I'm not, at her tutorials. She finger presses a lot. She makes a seam, and then she'll finger press very carefully along the grain of the fabric. I don't finger press. I might. I was thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, I might finger press. I cut this finger off, as you know, and I had to have surgery on it years and years and years ago. And I don't have a lot of feeling in this finger, my index finger. So sometimes I just sort of hold it out of the way, actually. Or if I do, I'm very aware that my finger hurts constantly, because the physical therapy didn't really help. You know, you put it in rice and you try to desensitize it. It didn't really help. So I'm aware. So that's why I'm not too keen on finger pressing, because my finger hurts always. But maybe with this one, I haven't cut that one off yet. With this one, maybe I'll start like finger pressing, because she does it really well. But I just said, and then I was watching a tutorial, and she's like, I finger press, and then I don't really have to set my seams. And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll do that. But I set my seams. Anyway, the important thing is to make sure your block is really pressed beautifully. Everything going in the same direction. Don't get little tucks or little folds. And there you have block number 16, folks. So I hope you love it. There you go. Look at that. Super block. Love it. Okay. Block 16, unreal. So have at it. All right, folks. Thanks so much. See you. Bye.